Welcome, everybody, to our talk tonight. I'm Michael Dalton from Bioenergy Healing, and our talk is It's Time to Break Up with Yourself. At least it's time to break up with the old version of yourself. Oh, so much to discuss tonight. As mentioned before, I've been doing bioenergy healing for over 30 years, and I decided for my 30th year, I would offer some free webinars as a way of sharing some of this beautiful work that is bioenergy healing with everybody. And over those 30 years, I've done, I guess, thousands of healing sessions and thousands of training courses, and I've worked in multiple countries, and I've had the opportunity to share the beautiful work that is bioenergy healing with a lot of people, especially helping people recover from chronic illness, long-term illness, and turning their health around. And each week I've been doing a different talk as a way of sharing some of the insights to bioenergy. And tonight's talk, I thought I would jump into an idea of breaking up, at least breaking up with a version of yourself. And it's from this idea that often when I'm working with people with chronic illness, they're in such a relationship with themselves. You know, they're in this like version of themselves that has been going on for a long time. And I often find that for people to turn their health around, they literally have to break up with the part of themselves that has an emotional relationship to their illness. Because otherwise, like, years will go by and the person will stay sick, no matter how much physical treatment they're doing. Sorry, I'm just adding people here. But no matter how much physical treatment, work they're getting done on themselves, if they don't break up with the emotional side of themselves, at least the old version of themselves, then they will emotionally and mentally keep recreating the same illness over and over again. And that's what I've seen like thousands of times, that there's, you know, when people recover from chronic illness, long-term illness, that something changes inside of them, something shifts inside of them. And it's not just the physical, but it's an emotional and a mental shift. And I think that mental shift, which is followed then by the emotion, begins with this concept of I'm done. And so I bring that to our talk tonight as, you know, there's parts of us, maybe there's a part of yourself that that can be hard on yourself. You know, it's like nobody is harder on us than we are on ourselves. Does that make sense? You know, like if you had friends that spoke to you the way you spoke to yourself, you'd probably get rid of them. You'd probably break up with them, like, in all honesty. If you had friends that disrespected you, that put you down, that said terrible things about your body, you're not going to want to be around them. And yet there's a part of us that gets away with that almost every day. There's a part of us that you can look at your own body, be it in the mirror or when you're getting dressed, and say bad things about yourself and then just be okay with that. Like, it's like that part of you gets away with it. It's because you've done it for so long, because it's so familiar. But you imagine someone else doing that to you. You imagine being in a relationship with someone that every time you get dressed, they put you down. You're not going to stay in a relationship with them for very long. You're going to break up with them, right? They're like out of there, right? You're not going to let friends continue to like speak badly of you and disrespect you and put you down. But yet there's a part of you and me, we all do it, that gets away with it. There's a part of us that it's like, it's just below our sometimes our level of consciousness. It's like it becomes so familiar and so normalized that it just gets away with it. Well, tonight I thought we would bring that part up into the consciousness and we would break up with it, right? We'd break up with that part of ourselves, because I think that the energies are changing. I think that we're in an incredible, I think it is an incredible time to be alive. You know, some people say it's a wonderful time to be alive. I don't know about that. I think it's an interesting time to be alive. It's a freaking crazy time to be alive, right? Like life is freaking crazy. And I think we've all got our work cut out for us, you know, just being alive at this time and navigating all the things that we're juggling and navigating, you know, and I think that the world is going through a massive healing. And I think it's very much part of a massive paradigm shift, an evolutionary shift that humanity is in, that humanity has been driving and moving towards for a long period of time. And we're in this very significant time of change right now that has been prophesized by many early cultures. First Nation cultures have prophesized the time where there would be this massive shift. And the Buddhists talked about the time of the golden age, an age where we would go through a transformation. I believe that time is upon us and that we're going through a tremendous transformation. And I've referred to this, you know, over many years as the transformation of the caterpillar to the butterfly, you know, and the caterpillar to the butterfly, you know, sounds like a very beautiful transformation. You know, the caterpillar goes into cocoon, has a beautiful sleep, and then wakes up as a very beautiful butterfly. You know, but it's kind of not quite like that. I mean, that's the outer surface, right? But on what's really happening is that the caterpillar is often consuming, I think it's something like 600 times its weight. It's just consumption, and then it goes into its cocoon, and literally the caterpillar starts to die off. Every part of the caterpillar, nothing is left of the caterpillar, not even the eyes. Everything turns into goop. Everything turns into absolute goop. And the new cells are being formed for the butterfly, and these cells are called luminary cells. And the luminary cells find each other. They pull, they light up each other, and they pull the different cells towards each other. And I think that's also like happens in our world, in that we call this finding your tribe, you know. So around the world, like people are like, it's almost like breaking up with the old version of themselves. So like whether it's been jobs or relationships or people have been in these, definitely this past 3 years, have been moving into different groups of people, moving into different tribes of people that maybe they resonate a bit more with, or they're in harmony more with. And we call that the luminary cells are lighting up. So it's like you're finding people that you have reflections with, that you're feeling more harmony with, and you're finding each other and then kind of coming together. And so as we come back now to in the cocoon, and the caterpillar is literally dissolving into goop, and the butterfly is being formed. And as the butterfly is being formed, it's like the caterpillar is completely dissolving and becoming the butterfly. And it's just a metaphor, but it's like a beautiful kind of like symbol of transformation. And this symbol is often used as we talk about the transformation, the spiritual transformation that humanity is under right now. And we're under a phenomenal spiritual transformation. The world is changing in a very big way. And that like spiritual transformation can often be kind of broken down and seen, you know, say from a healing perspective. And from that healing perspective, it's like we're in the big purge. So it's like just like the caterpillar was as a caterpillar, it was in the state of consumption, consumerism, you know, it just consumes and stuff. We've been going through a period of time of consumerism, consumption, and, you know, not maybe forethought about where products that we got, where they were being made, how they were being made, but caught in a kind of like a reality of just like the next thing, consuming stuff. And as the world goes through its healing process, we've had like 3 years of the world coming to a standstill, and maybe people losing their jobs or being challenged in multiple ways. I don't think there's anybody hasn't been challenged in some ways over the last 3 years. And one of the things that happens is it's just like your life is everything is amplified. So whatever issues are on in your life are amplified. Stuff with work, relationships. Like if someone say had to spend more time at home in the last 3 years, all of a sudden they had to confront things with the relationship. If people had, say as an example, someone's biggest fear is like financial worry. So they're like really worried about losing their finances. Well, in healing, you could say like that fear, which is a normal fear, that's not an abnormal fear, but it's like we have these egoic wounds. So your ego is the wounds that we carry from childhood. And not everybody has the same wounds. We have different wounds based on our culture, conditioning, our programming, but mostly our family setup and how we've interacted with our parents and siblings. And so like as an example, people maybe had a wound of like, well, what if I lost my job? What if I lost my finances? How would I survive? And I think in some ways people got an opportunity to experience their wounds. They got an opportunity so many people had an opportunity to experience losing their job. So many people had an opportunity to experience, breaking up in a relationship or spending their savings, spending all their finances, and then realizing, okay, well, I'm still alive. You didn't die, but you're still here and you're still around and you're still alive. And so I think that, part of the healing process of what we've gone through over these last few years is we've been building a lot of resilience, right? Does anybody feel, by a show of hands, does anybody feel more resilient than they were a few years ago, right? I mean, we're toughening up, we're getting tougher and stronger, right? And we've been through a lot, right? Like, and even the kids have been through a lot, right? Like, but we've all been through so much. And, so I think resilience is probably one of the biggest thing that comes up, is like that we have growing stronger from the inside out. We've been pushed or forced into like being more resilient, being stronger. And I think, over these past couple of years, a lot of people have had a lot of opportunity to maybe stand up and speak out for themselves, in everything, like with family, with friends, with jobs, with their medical health, with traveling, with restaurants. There's been a lot of opportunity to stand up and speak out for yourself. Isn't that true? Right? Like, I know one girl who was like, her family told her she couldn't go and visit them because she refused to take a vaccine. And the family were like, well, you're not going to come and visit until you take the vaccine. And I think, like, regardless of, whether you agree or disagree with that kind of narrative, it's like, that's a lot for someone to go through, right? In what is already a difficult time for people to lose their family or disconnect with family and friends over different beliefs, over different opinions. And, so I think people have gone through so much of having to stand up or speak out for themselves, or stand their ground, or do things maybe that they didn't want to do. I know some people who took vaccines because they were in jobs that kind of forced them to take it, and then afterwards they regret it, and then even some people got sick. And so it's like, I feel like people have really been put into the healing process. They've been put into the opportunity to dig into their wounds, to process so much stuff. And we've had opportunities. I think we've had huge, like, especially in the first year, like a huge opportunity to access all our triggers, our emotional triggers, our mental triggers, right? And I mean, now, I mean, sometimes I have to admit, sometimes I feel a little triggered. I see someone like 3 years later wearing a mask in the car, and I'm like, still, come on, you know. And it's kind of like, you know, maybe with triggers, right? Whatever triggers we have, it says something about our beliefs, and it says something about our conditioning and our programming and what we expect and what we believe. And I think as we're confronted with triggers over and over, and we start to process and we start to look at those triggers, we get the opportunity to dissolve them. In essence, we get the opportunity to break up with our triggers. We get the opportunity to break up with the ego. And that's really what we're breaking up with. We're breaking up with the part of ourselves that is hurting ourselves, the part of ourselves that is wounded, the part of ourselves that is part of the how would I say it, like the collective programming of wounding, right? And so we have kind of two ways I would say it. It's kind of like we have the microcosm and we have the macrocosm. And the microcosm is, you know, you and your life and your family. And then the macrocosm is the world at large, right? So the collective family. In the big family, you could say we're all brothers and sisters and we're all part of a big family, right? Like we're all people and we're all part of a big family of brothers and sisters, you know, 7 billion something, you know, and we're part of a big collective. But you know, that's the macrocosm. But then on the microcosm level, there's you and there's your family and there's your things that you're processing and your life, right? And so in healing, the tendency is that you're born into a family's lineage. So you're born into a particular family with particular issues, you know. So like you have your grandparents and your great grandparents and your great great grandparents, and so you're born into a particular lineage. And that lineage, you know, different families' lineage might have different wounding, you know, but you're born into a particular family and particular wounding with the opportunity to help heal that family's lineage, to help heal that family's DNA. And as you help and contribute to your family's healing and to the healing of your ancestors, that's the microcosm. That's how you're helping and contributing your healing to the macrocosm, which is the larger, which is the world at large, right? So it's not that you're responsible for healing everybody or even healing everyone in your own family. You know, sometimes people feel like that often people say like it's the black sheep in the family that does a lot of the healing for the whole family. But it's not that one person is responsible for healing in a whole family. It's just that, you know, within a family, within siblings, brothers and sisters and parents and grandparents and cousins and all, it's like healing is distributed out through the whole family. And that sometimes people have this capacity to take on more than what they think they're able to. And that as you go through your healing process and you're healing the egoic part of you, which is the ego part, is the wounds that you're taking on from your family's DNA. It's the wounds that you're taking on from your ancestors. And as you start to heal that relationship inside of you, as you start to make peace with that relationship inside of you, that has carried that wounding forward from ancestor to ancestor to ancestor. And as it stops with you and you start to heal that part of you, the part that gets triggered, the part that accesses anger very quickly, very easy, the part of you that is not even responding with anger, it's reacting with anger, and reacting with sadness, or reacting with grief, or guilt or shame. Like, we carry these things through our DNA, through our family's lineage. And so as you have these old relationships come up to the surface, guilt and shame and fear is such a huge one that is carried forward from the family, as well as guilt and shame, right? Like the first three chakras, the root chakra is fear, the sacral chakra is guilt, and the solar plexus chakra is shame. And before we even go into any other chakras, but the first three lower chakras are the unconscious chakras. So we tend to carry fear, guilt, and shame unconsciously, and it comes in through our DNA unconsciously. So it comes in through the family's lineage, through the ancestry, through our parents, through our siblings, and it comes in, it gets carried forward in. And then we get the opportunity to process it. And I say the opportunity, I know when you think of your ancestors, you think, it'd be nice to get some money, right? Like your lineage. It'd be nice to get, for an inheritance, you were hoping for a big lump sum of money. And what you got was their guilt and their shame. Lovely, And that's kind of like, folks, that's just the way it is. That's how it goes, right? Like your ancestors did so much to let go of their anger and their guilt and their shame and their pain and their suffering. They were born at a different time than you, right? They were born into a time that was more difficult, a time that was challenging in its own way, a time where there was a lot less communication, a lot less expression, a lot less creativity, a lot less resources, and healers and counselors and support. When for their wounding, a lot of people had to keep it to themselves in the past. They didn't have that opportunity to share their wounding and share their pain and share their suffering, and they had to suffer alone or turn it inwards, right? And as opposed to now, where we have so many resources, and it's like we have so many beautiful healing resources available to us. Generally, what we do is we wait till we get sick, and then we start taking care of ourselves. I mean, even the fact that we can do that is pretty friggin' awesome, right? Like, you can even ignore your health, avoid your health until it catches up to you. And who knows, you might get a good run of a good few years without getting sick. And then, generally, if we're not doing the work, either somebody else is going to have to do the work, right? Like, if we're not doing the work on ourselves, then maybe we're projecting a lot onto the people around us, or we're wounding others because we're not relieving or dissolving those wounds inside ourselves. And so in terms of our family, like, our family they've done so much to process and release that out with the resources that they had available to them at that time. Does that make sense? Because a lot of times in healing, people often think, well, if you met my parents, my parents, and a lot of people in healing, like, there's a lot of blame around their parents, right? Like, it's not saying that any of you here have that, but it's not uncommon, right? Like, it's not uncommon in healing that people say, look, my parents have a lot to answer for. I don't know. I just think, right, like, if you take your parents and you go to the grandparents, your parents probably did a lot better, than what your grandparents had to deal with, and your grandparents did a lot better than what the great grandparents had to deal with. That each generation is generally trying to improve upon the one that went before it. And it's going to be the same. Your kids are going to want to improve upon, no matter how good you do, no matter how hard you try, your kids are going to look at you and say, I'm going to do better. And I don't know that there's anything wrong with that. I think that that's part of the evolutionary process, right? Like that they're like, you did a few faults and I think we can improve. That's what your kids are going to do, no matter how good you do, no matter how hard you try. And I know that's hard sometimes, especially for the perfectionist inside of you that's like, I'm going to do great with my kids. No matter how great you do, they're still probably going to say you could have done better. And that's just the process of life. With that said, though, it's like we can only blame our parents and our grandparents and our ancestors for so much. Basically, when we go back through time, there's some pretty horrendous, barbaric times that people lived in, and that pain, that suffering gets carried through the family. It's in the DNA. It moves through the lineage of the family. And sometimes you're healing stuff that you don't know where it comes from. And sometimes it's just purely unconscious. It doesn't even have anything to do with you. And sometimes when you're reacting to stuff, whether it's the fear, the guilt, the shame, and the shame, the solar plexus one, like the shame is also like has to do with anger as well. Sometimes like when people are very reactive, it's like, I always say, it's like if you see someone like in the traffic and they're having road rage, someone's in traffic and they're beeping and they're screaming and shouting. I mean, you don't see it too often, at least not where I live, but I mean, everybody sees it at some point, right? But when you see a grown man or a woman and they're in their car and they're like screaming and shouting, in that moment right there, they're not angry at you cutting them off. They're not angry at, the traffic light. They're probably like back to when they were 5 years of age, right? They're literally back in time. They're literally transformed back into a child that is screaming and shouting and didn't get to express themselves or didn't get to learn how to communicate in a healthy way. And they literally transform back into an old relationship, an old version of themselves that is still like there and then comes alive when they're in a reactive mode. And then afterwards they might feel guilty or shameful because they're like, where did that old version of them come from? And sometimes that happens. People in arguments, people start to having a row or a fit, and they're rude and disrespectful to each other, and then they're like, where did that come from? And I feel, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like that's now an old paradigm that I think as a people, maybe I feel maybe I'm around a lot of conscious people, or just people who like wouldn't put up with that anymore, won't put up with relationships where they're being disrespected, where they're being put down, that there's a sense of boundaries, right? Like I'm willing to communicate, but once you start disrespecting, it's over, and so I think as we're evolving into a conscious, sorry, I'm just adding someone here, as we're evolving into like conscious, more and more conscious communication, just as we would break up with someone who's disrespecting us, or we would create time and space with someone who is disrespecting us, I think that there's also an opportunity to unravel and heal ourselves, an opportunity to engage in the part of us that is wounded, and to unravel that part of ourselves, and to literally break up with that part of ourselves, to break up with the part of us that is reactive, to break up with the part that is no longer serving us, to break up with that egoic part. And I believe that is the time that we're in. The time that we're in is the dissolving of our wounding, for want of saying it another way, the dissolving of the ego. And it's a time that we're in a time right now where you get to see how it plays out when like big companies and corporations that are just out for profit, whether it's the banking system or food industry or the medical industry or governments, these huge big corporations, and you get to see that a lot of these big corporations being exposed, right, for greed and corruption, and I think that macrocosm is a reflection of the microcosm, is a reflection of the healing that we're doing inside of ourselves. That the world is like the corruption is being exposed in the world is a reflection of us exposing the parts of ourselves that is up for healing, the shadow self. And so a lot of things that, you know, from medical to governments to food industry to banking industry to the education industry, it's all out there for people to see. Like all of the corruption is out there to see. If you've got eyes to see, it's kind of doesn't take much to see all the craziness that's going on. But all of that is also inside each and every one of us, and that's the shadow self. It's the part of us that is like corrupt on the inside. So what's that corruption on the inside? Well, the part of us that is like I said, if somebody else is disrespectful to you, you'll create a boundary. But what happens when you're disrespectful to you, right? Well, you know, if a food industry is knowingly giving us food that is like bad or causing cancer, we want to hold it accountable. But what about us feeding ourselves with food that we know is causing cancer and doing it anyway, right? So it's like we're doing a lot of what the world is doing, but we're doing it unconsciously, like in an unconscious way. And so that relationship continues on in the same way that someone could be chronically ill for 20 or 30 years in a relationship with their chronic illness, and it goes on for 10 or 20 or even 30 years, and they go on in this damaging relationship with themselves with chronic illness, because it remains unconscious. It remains out of their field of vision. It remains in the blind spot, right? So sorry, just adding people here. Let me take a moment to breathe. That was a big mouthful so far. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. We have a great crowd tonight, and our talk is breaking up with the old version of yourself. And at this point of the talk, we're talking about the outer world is a reflection of our inner world, and the outer changes and the collapse of a paradigm is also the healing of our shadow self. It's the healing, the inner healing that's taking place. And that as we're going through the process of healing ourselves and our family, we're actually also healing back through our lineage. We're healing back through our DNA in our family. And there's a beautiful thing I've heard from First Nation communities, where they say that when a person heals, like truly heals, they heal 7 generations backwards in time. And at the same time that they truly heal, they heal 7 generations forwards in time. And I think that's really beautiful. And I had an opportunity one time to experience that. I was working on this lady, and we're in our healing session, and she had this trauma, and she didn't know where it was from or what it was from. And I was in her energy field. I was working up around the back of the head. in the biofield side, like close to the body is where physical trauma is, and then emotional trauma is further back, and then mental trauma is back further again into the energy field. And so there was this trauma going through the different layers of the energy field. And so we're been doing this healing over 3 sessions. I think we're in like the 3rd session. And as I was working on her, like most trauma I work with, most of I'm working with is very much present moment, like what's going on in a person's life and issues that are coming up in their life. And every now and again, you have to kind of access and go in and do healing for something that is actually before they were even born. And in this particular case, what happened was I started getting these flash images of not this woman who was in front of me, but her like it was like her great grandmother being hit in the back of the head with this like some sort of tool, and it like cracked the back of her head open. And it was a really graphic image that I got in the healing session. And so I was doing some work to heal that. I was working on the biofield around the back of her head, and there was a beautiful moment where just like the healing, it just like after 3 sessions, it just felt like it just healed and clicked in and released. And then the energy got really light out into different layers of the auric field, and I could feel like, oh, this is really beautiful now. This trauma's gone. But what happened next was really amazing. And the woman, so she at this point, like she was really like, she was crying, she was really releasing a lot, but then she was like feeling like really relieved, and she was crying, but she was so she was very emotional. But I had this I'll just come out and tell you, it was like literally I could literally see these women standing behind her, and it was just like a vision. I literally saw this vision, and there was at least like 5 or 6 women standing behind her, and they seemed like all different ages, and they were literally celebrating, and they were so rejoiceful, and they were so celebratory. And I had these like cold feelings run up and down through my spine, and it was just this like pure like aware, like this opportunity to witness someone's healing at that depth, where her ancestors had come in to celebrate with her. And then I never said a word to the woman. And then the woman, like she said to me, she said she felt like all her family, all the women in her family are here with her. And then I never said a thing to her, and she literally said, I feel like all my ancestors, all the women in my like behind me are here with me. And it was just this most incredible moment where I felt like I got an opportunity to witness that when she went through her healing now, that this was healing for like the whole family, and that there was this beautiful celebration. And what she was actually healing was like a concussion from a car crash. So it's like, this would seem like, oh yeah, but this is concussion, this is from a car crash, this is from this lifetime. And yeah, absolutely it was. But there was a deeper wound that came to the surface during the healing, a deeper wound that as she was healing her wound, it actually healed the wound that was carried from the women. And there was a fear that she released that was part of that, a fear of I'll just kind of share, it was a fear around men. And it was a fear around men that she came out of it, and she's like, I feel like I've just let go of all this fear that I had around men. And it just made so much sense that she was healing this like fear from her lineage. And so it's like, here we have this opportunity as we're like progressing into our our lives, it's like everything that has gone through our ancestry, we have an opportunity to process that in our life right now. And it's not all on you to have to release and heal the past, right? Like it's not, it's an invitation, right? That's the best way I can put it. There's an invitation for you, an invitation to heal your wounds, an invitation to do the work on yourself, an invitation to turn towards those things that trigger you and say, thank you. Thank you for showing me where my pain is. Thank you for showing me, that I feel shame around this. Thank you for showing me that I feel guilty. Thank you. And so in bioenergy healing, this thank you exercise is one of the ways that instead of avoiding the pain and suffering and the wounding and the emotional triggers, that we turn towards it and you say, thank you. Thank you for showing me. Thank you for triggering me. Even if someone triggers you, doesn't that sound strange? You say thank you to them. Someone upsets you and you're like, thank you. It's like, but not from like, oh, thanks a lot. No, but it's like, oh, thank you. And they're kind of surprised. They're like, they thought you were going to be angry or something. And you're like, no, thank you. Thank you for showing me where my wound is, right? Because if you had no wound, you won't be triggered. So there's and then what you do is you're like, where do I feel that in my body? Oh, I feel it in the stomach. Right there, that's where your wound is. That's where your unhealed wound is. That's where your ego is holding on to the past from your childhood. And so we breathe into that, we open that up. And in healing, sorry, Ella's just saying gratefulness to the key, bringing into healing and more. Yes, absolutely. In healing, we get this opportunity to create a space for people to go and do the work on themselves, to create the space to slow down, to pause, right? Because sometimes life is busy and we get distracted. There's a lot of distractions in life, isn't there? Like there's a lot of distractions. It's almost like the world is continuously distracted from its own healing. The world is continuously distracted from doing the work on ourselves, from our spiritual journey, from our spiritual growth, from our healing growth. There's so much distraction to be somewhere else, to do something else, to consume, right? Consume, to redirect our attention, right? And so to be able to come and sit with ourselves, to be able to break up with the part of ourselves that's not able to sit still. Boom. To be able to break up with the part of ourselves that doesn't have time for healing, right? I always think if you don't have time for healing, create double the amount of time for your healing, right? Because the one thing that everybody says when they get sick is, I wished I would have created time for my healing, And it's like, if you don't make time for your healing, you'll be forced to make time for your sickness, right? Because your growth, your evolutionary growth, it's not concerned about houses and cars and relationships and a new pair of shoes. Your growth is not concerned with those things. Your growth is concerned with what impact is life having upon you, and are you growing and evolving into the best version of yourself? Are you healing your wounds? Are you transforming? Are you changing? Are you opening and expanding into the highest version of yourself, or are you repeating the same old patterns? Are you avoiding your growth and repeating the same patterns? And what it does is, and I think our soul does this on purpose, is it will keep if we keep avoiding doing the work on ourselves, our soul will bring up opportunities for us to experience challenges, because the challenges will put you into growth, right? What you avoid, you'll be forced to deal with, because the challenges, you'll have no choice but to deal with the growth. And the reason I say this is because, you know, my work is around helping people who are sick and unhealthy and who have chronic illness or acute illness, you know, and it's always looking at, why do people get sick? Why do people get ill? Why do people stay sick? Why are some people sick for 20, 30 years? How can someone be sick for 10 years? How is that even possible in today's society? Look, technology hasn't stopped advancing, right? Medicine hasn't stopped advancing, right? There's been no stopping and advancing with medicine and technology. And yet, even with the best of medicine and the best of technology and the best of vaccines and the best of all these things, people still get sick, right? Why is that? Why do people still get sick? And I think it comes down to a couple of very simple things. And sorry, I'm just adding someone in here. It comes back to a couple of simple things. And some of those simple things is, are we living in right relationship with the self? Are we in right relationship with nature? And are we in right relationship with each other? You know, and if we're not in right relationship with ourselves, we're living out of harmony with the true self. If we're living out of harmony with nature, with the elements, the earth, the water, the fire and air, if we're living out of harmony with each other, then we're out of alignment, right? And it catches up on us, right? Like it has to have an effect. We're not going to be healthy and well and full of energy and vitality if we're doing jobs that we don't want to do. You know, sometimes I say to people who are sick, you know, you need to break up with your job. And they're like, oh, but I'm getting really well paid. And I'm like, I know it must be hard. It must be hard to leave it, right? And they're like, yeah, but I'm going to get a pension. I'm like, when? They're like, in 15 years. I'm thinking, you might be dead, right? You might be dead by then. If you have to go to a job that you hate for 15 more years, you might not be around to collect the pension, right? And then people are like, there's people in really unhealthy relationships. And it's like, maybe they need to break up in that relationship. And they're like, yeah, but I don't have the finances to break up with someone. Well, unfortunately, that's not a good excuse, right? That's not a good reason to stay in an unhealthy relationship, right? And so I think that, you know, so many people in this past couple of years, they really had an opportunity to break up with what their beliefs were around finances, what their beliefs were around like financial support, you know. And then to like, when you lose all your finances, like if people have lost all their finances anyway in the last couple of years, then it's like, now you don't have, you can't say, well, I'm keep doing it for my finances. Well, if you've lost your finances, now there's not much left to lose, right? And I think that that's part of the dissolving of the ego. I think that that's the dissolving of the caterpillar. I genuinely feel that we're in the cocoon where the caterpillar is completely dissolving, and we're dissolving the old version of ourselves. And the old version is kicking and screaming and it doesn't want to go, you know, and we have to say goodbye to it. We have to break up with it. And it doesn't mean that you have to leave a job or you have to leave a relationship. It means you got to leave the part of yourself that's wounded. You got to leave the part of yourself that is reactive. And sometimes it does mean you've got to leave a job, or you got to leave a relationship, or you got to leave a place that you're living. You got to make some changes. Sometimes it does mean that. A lot of times it doesn't, though. A lot of times we just have to leave the way that we see ourselves. And I think that the way that we see ourselves is sometimes we have a very bad image or a bad view of ourselves. That, like, you know, I've done a lot of group work over the years, and when you do a lot of group practices and you do different exercises and you do all these different kinds of ways to unravel people and get people down to their what we call the core wounds. So there's like 5 fundamental core wounds that everybody has inside. And when you get down to the core of the core wounds, I'll just tell you exactly what it is. Drum roll, right? The core wound that it doesn't matter where people come from, what country we teach this in, what courses we're doing, people have the same core wound all over the world. And that core wound is not feckin' feeling good enough. Not feeling good enough inside. It's the same core wound that everyone suffers from, you know, and they hide it in layers with distraction, with restlessness, right? So if they're not jumping from one relationship to another, one job to another, or one new pair of shoes to a new bag to a new car, if they're not always jumping from one thing and they really get into the uncomfortable places inside of themselves, that uncomfortable places that they don't love themselves. And that's the healing that the world is going through right now. Because if we were in a world where people truly, really loved themselves, then we wouldn't have this macrocosm of exploitation for profit, this like harmful food and pharmaceuticals and stuff that is like harming people. We would be more like love-centered, more human-centered. And I believe that that's what the caterpillar, the ending of the caterpillar and the birthing of the butterfly represents. That we're transitioning into a new human species. We're transitioning into a new version of ourselves, a version that is based on love, a version that is based on our full fractal light consciousness, a version that is more whole and more complete, a version of us that has returned to self-love, not selflessness or selfishness, you know, but not selfishness, but like more of a selflessness, more of like this, when we have this like self-love and we see everyone as part of that collective brotherhood and sisterhood, then there's a selflessness about our self-love. And there's a humanity and a compassion, a kindness and compassion in that way of being. And I believe that that's what we're returning to. And I think that the system that we're in is collapsing. The system, the structures that we're in is collapsing because as a macrocosm, it's out of alignment and it's coming tumbling down, you know. And so the world is a pretty crazy place at this moment. But with that said, something beautiful is emerging. Something beautiful is happening. And it's whenever any system changes, it looks chaotic when the system collapses. When the system collapses, it seems like it's chaotic because it's restructuring itself, right? And as the system falls down on top of each other, it seems like everything is falling apart. And then as it starts to form stability, then a new, more stable foundation is formed. And I believe that that's what's forming within us, that we're within the microcosm, we're returning back to our resilience, our strength, our standing up for ourselves, our speaking out for ourselves, our finding our sovereignty, finding our self-love, and more importantly, finding our self-worth, right? And as we own that and embrace that full fractal light energy as we embrace that energy within ourselves, then we're bringing that energy into the macrocosm, into the world, into the governments and the corporations and the banking system, because all of those systems are just people, right? They're people, and they're people that the people go into the systems, and the systems take them out of alignment. And so those systems, as people start to come back into alignment, then they bring that alignment back into those systems. Imagine where those systems put people first, then everything changes. And I believe that's what we're moving towards. But I think it begins with us also coming back and putting our love for ourselves back in the right place, to actually start to love ourselves, to find healing in the parts of us that are wounded, and to return love to the parts of us that are unhealed, that we've carried from our ancestry forward. And that this is the generation where the wounding stops and the transformation, because of what we call the tipping point, because so many people are waking up to their own healing, are waking up to their own transformation and returning to their light. So many people are waking up and coming into self-realization of love and compassion and kindness, that so many people are waking up to that it's having an impact across the world. And although you may not see it in the news or something like that, but energetically you can feel it. You can feel that things are changing. You can feel that, your tribe is more caring and more loving and more compassionate. And maybe the people that, were in extreme beliefs to you, maybe you're not even like talking to them anymore. Maybe it's like they're on the other side of a polarization. It's like they're worlds apart, but that the people that are surrounding you now, maybe they're matching that energy of very loving and very kind and very compassionate and very respectful and very communicating with just love and consciousness. And that's the transformation that I believe is happening. This is the butterfly emerging. This is the luminary cells finding each other, connecting with each other, and a new species forming out of the phoenix, out of the old transformation. And boy, have we gone through the fires, have we built some resilience, over these last, 3 years? Because I think it's important to acknowledge it, right? Like, it's been 3 fucking years, right? And it's like, we've had so much to go through and so much to heal, and just to acknowledge, to give yourself a pat on the back. You're still here. You're still going. Well done, you. Well done, you. Boom. Right? And so I think, like, part of the healing process that we're in collectively has been like transforming time. Like, I don't know, maybe some of you felt like either time has been going really fast at some moments and then really slow at some moments. Has anyone experienced that, where like it felt like, especially the first year, 3 years back, time went incredibly fast, and then the next, like 2022 was almost like it was 2020 all over again. 2022. But it's like the year 2020 went like so slow, so time was really slowing down. And in healing, what happens when time slows down is that if we keep going at the same speed that we always go at, then we don't become conscious or aware of the patterns. We just stay in the same patterns, doing the same things. But when everything slows down and goes really slow, you have an opportunity to look around. You have time, because time gives you space, right? And you have space to look around, time and space to look around and see what's happening, you know. And even to look at, in the last couple of years, you've had time to look at the medical system, your government, your food industry. You've had time to look at things that maybe you didn't have the time to look at before. You've had time to look at your job. You've had time to look at your relationship, time to look at your children. You've had time, a lot of time to look at things that maybe you didn't have an opportunity to look at. And so time and space are part of the process, you know. And now I feel like now you're being, if you didn't take that time, now that time is being forced upon you. So anyone who hasn't been doing their healing, now you're being forced into it by the universal momentum of energy that is moving us all forward into our evolutionary process, right? And so I think what that means is like that, how can I say it? We're being birthed into the present moment. Does anybody find it really hard to make plans? Maybe you're starting to make plans again, but did anybody in these last couple of years, did you find it really hard to like make plans with people and to organize things? Like, did it seem like it was like things that you would normally do and how you used to make plans, how easy that was in certain ways? And then in these last few years, or even to now, you might find that like it's different, right? Like that how you organize yourself is different than how you used to. And how you used to take maybe a lot more time to do things, now your relationship to time is very different. And I think that part of that is that the healing process that we're going through right now is that we're being birthed into the present moment awareness. You know, does that make sense to anybody? Beautiful. Well, I hope that you've gotten something out of our talk tonight that was breaking up with the old version of ourselves. And I hope that you can take something out of what was said and use it moving forward in terms of healing. I've copied a link into the chat side, and it's for Linktree. It's Linktree Mike Dalton's Bioenergy, and it has a list of my workshops, courses, booking calendar for sessions. And if anybody's open or interested in having some, whether you'd like to have some private sessions, either in person in Vancouver or online, I'd encourage you maybe have at least try one session, see how you get on with it. Workshops, we have level 1 workshops for working on yourself and family and friends. Level 2 workshops is practitioner diploma training course. We've one coming up in May, a practitioner diploma training course, putting your health back in your hands and being part of the service and the growth to helping other people heal. You know, so there's 2 aspects. One, it's important to do your healing, you know, do the healing for you. And then, you know, sometimes you might feel that there's a call to service, that there's something in you that wants to help other people, and if you feel that call to service, please check out our courses. I think doing healing for other people is the most beautiful gift. You know, I recently celebrated 30 years of doing bioenergy, and I really had to ask myself, you know, after 30 years, it's like, you know, should I be retiring, right? Like I feel young, but I'm older. But you know, after 30 years is a long time doing healing for people, you know. And I asked myself, you know, should I retire? Like, am I ready to retire? And I realized there was a moment where I realized, like, I think the gift for me now, like I was meditating, praying to Great Spirit, and I said, dear Great Spirit, if I could get a gift, you know, it would be to have another 30 years of healing. to be able to do this work for people for the next 30 years. And there was something about, like, it's funny when you feel like, when you let go of everything, that's when you realize whether you want it in your life or not, you know. And it's like even for me, I had to let go of bioenergy this year. I had to like I got an opportunity in the last 3 years to lose all my courses, my sessions, you know, to lose all my work, and then see, like, should I just let it go, or does it, you know, is it really what I still want to do after all this time? Is it what I want to do? And then you know, people would reach out and say they want sessions and they want courses, and what I teach on, like, through Zoom, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do healing through Zoom. And then when I decided like that, you know, well, people wanted the help and I would do it through Zoom. Once you decide you're going to do something, then you figure out how to do it. And now I love it. Now I love doing healings through Zoom. It's so bizarre. It's so nice to there's benefits to both. There's benefits doing healing with people in person, and there's benefits to doing it in online. There's benefits doing teaching in person. We had a level 1 bioenergy this weekend in Vancouver. It's so nice to meet people in person. And then in May, our level 2 is through Zoom. And that's on a Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. over 18 classes. And what's really cool about that is that, yeah, it's great to do it in person, but what's really cool is we have people doing it from different countries. And so it's nice to be able to bring the bioenergy healing to people in other countries. And I think that was an opportunity that, like, slowing down and shifting from only doing in-person courses to now doing in-person and online courses. That's maybe a gift that I got out of the last couple of years, is to be able to grow bioenergy and bring it to more people. I'm going to stop recording, but if anybody has any questions, please stay on and you can ask. For those who are tuning in later with YouTube, thank you for watching this video, and please check out my my courses and like and subscribe. Thank you.